My name is Clara Vance, and I'm 28 years old. Last year, I nearly died. The doctors told my adoptive parents I wouldn't survive the night. Their chilling response: "She's not our real daughter, we owe her nothing." Then, they left me alone. A week later, they showed up at my grandmother's house, ready to claim the inheritance she'd left me. But my bed was empty, just a letter waiting. When they read it, their lives began to crumble. If you've ever felt abandoned, hit that like and subscribe. You'll want to see how I finally wrote my own ending. I grew up in a quiet neighborhood in a comfortable suburban house with a well-kept garden. From the outside, we were the ideal American family. Mother, father, 2 daughters. My childhood albums show picture-perfect birthday parties with coordinated themes, Christmas mornings buried in gifts, and vacations to popular resorts. But photographs can hide the truth. My first memory of feeling different was at age 5. My sister Emily had broken a ceramic figurine while running through the living room. When my mother rushed in, I was already gathering the pieces. "What happened here?" she demanded. "I did it," I said automatically, not even thinking. Later, I overheard my mother on the phone. "Clara's always been so eager to please, not like Emily." "Emily has spirit." Spirit! That was the word my parents used when Emily threw fits in stores, when she refused to eat her vegetables, when she talked back. When I did my homework without being asked, it was because I was dutiful. When Emily finally did hers, she was brilliant. The differences were subtle at first. Emily got the larger room. Emily got to pick the restaurant on family night. Emily's drawings adorned the kitchen while mine were neatly tucked away in a drawer. "Your sister needs more encouragement," my father explained when I asked why my perfect grades didn't earn the same praise as Emily's average ones. You're naturally good at school." I was 12 when I finally understood why. It was past midnight and I'd gone for a glass of water. My parents were arguing in the kitchen, their voices carrying up the stairs. "You've always favored Emily," my mother hissed. "It's like you're trying to make up for Clara not being yours." "She's not yours either, Patricia," my father shot back. "We agreed when we took her that we'd never treat her differently." The glass slipped from my hand, shattering on the polished floor. The arguing stopped. I ran back to my room, heart pounding, and pretended to be asleep when my mother checked on me. Adopted. The word explained everything and nothing at the same time. Why my hair was dark when everyone else's was fair. Why I had hazel eyes when they all had blue. Why no matter how hard I tried, I never quite belonged. The next morning at breakfast, I waited for them to tell me, to explain, to reassure me that I was loved just the same. They said nothing, so I did. "I heard you last night," I said, my voice small but steady. "I know I'm adopted." My father's newspaper lowered slightly. My mother paused while pouring coffee. Then she smiled that tight smile that never reached her eyes. "Don't be ridiculous, Clara, you must have been dreaming." And that was it. No confirmation, no denial that felt like truth, just gaslighting. And breakfast as usual. I learned that day that in our house, truth was less important than appearance. After that, I poured myself into being perfect. If I couldn't be loved for who I was, perhaps I could be valued for what I achieved. I graduated at the top of my class in high school, earned a full scholarship to a prestigious university, and started my first company at 22. My parents attended my graduation, of course. They smiled for photos and accepted congratulations for having raised such an accomplished daughter. But there was always a distance in their eyes, as if they were looking at a project rather than a person. Only my grandmother, Beatrice, truly saw me. She lived in a beautiful old house in a charming town, filled with books, antique furniture, and the comforting scent of baked goods. I spent every summer with her from age 13 onward, after the adoption revelation. "You have your mother's eyes," she told me once when I was 15. It was the only acknowledgement from any family member that I had biological parents somewhere. "Who was she?" I asked. Grandmother Beatrice patted my hand. "Someone who loved you very much but couldn't keep you. Someday when you're older, I'll tell you everything." But someday kept getting postponed. Throughout college, whenever I asked, she'd say, "After you graduate." After graduation, it was when you're settled in your career. Later it became when the time is right. Meanwhile, my relationship with my parents deteriorated further. My father's legal firm represented my main rival in a business dispute. When I confronted him about the conflict of interest, he simply said, "Family is one thing. Business is another." Emily became a medical professional. following in our father's footsteps, though he'd switched to corporate law before we were born. Their shared medical background became yet another thing that excluded me from family conversations. The final rupture happened 3 years ago at a holiday dinner. Grandmother Beatrice was there, frailer than I remembered but still sharp as ever. Conversation turned to my company's recent success. We just secured major funding for an innovative diagnostic tool, I shared. I always knew Clara would do something special, Grandmother said proudly. Yes, well, she always was determined to prove herself, my mother replied with that familiar dismissive tone. Prove myself? I echoed. Is that what you think I've been doing all these years? Isn't it? My father asked, sipping his drink. Most adopted children go through a phase of overachievement. It's quite common, actually. The casual confirmation of what they'd denied for 15 years stunned me into silence. Dad! Emily looked shocked. What are you saying? Oh, she knows, my mother waved dismissively. She's known since she was 12, though I don't see why we need to discuss it at dinner. You've denied it my entire life, I said, my voice shaking. Every time I asked, you made me feel crazy for even suggesting it. We thought it was better that way, my father replied, as if explaining something to a difficult client. Children need stability. I needed truth, I countered. The truth is, my mother said with sudden sharpness, we gave you everything. A beautiful home, the best education, every advantage. Most adopted children would be grateful. Grandmother Beatrice's hand came down hard on the table. That's enough, Patricia. But it wasn't enough. 20 years of feeling like an outsider, of conditional love, of gaslit reality came pouring out. You never wanted me, I said. You wanted the idea of me. The perfect daughter you could show off at gatherings, the one who would validate your parenting without ever demanding actual parenting from you. I stood up, my napkin falling to the floor. I'm done trying to earn love that should have been freely given. I left that night and didn't look back. I changed my phone number, moved to a new apartment. Grandmother Beatrice was the only one I stayed in touch with, meeting for our weekly brunches away from my parents' house. They do love you, she insisted once. They just don't know how to show it. Love isn't supposed to be this hard, I replied. She died 6 months ago, peacefully in her sleep. I was traveling for work and missed the funeral. My parents didn't bother to call me about it. I found out through an attorney's letter informing me that Grandmother Beatrice had left me her house and the majority of her estate. I never got to hear the truth about my birth parents from her lips. But fate had other plans for revealing family secrets. The day of the accident started like any other Tuesday. I was at our company headquarters in the city, running tests on our newest software update. It was raining, that gentle, persistent urban drizzle that makes everything gray and slightly blurred at the edges. You should head home, Clara, my business partner Sophia suggested around 8. The update can wait until morning, but I've never been good at leaving things unfinished. By the time I finally left, it was after 10 ta'kar, and the rain had turned into a downpour. I remember thinking I should call a ride service, but my apartment was only 15 minutes away. What could happen in 15 minutes? The intersection of Elm and 4th has a tricky blind spot that locals know to watch for. The distracted driver who hit me wasn't local. I remember headlights suddenly filling my car, impossibly bright, the sound of metal crushing metal, the strange sensation of spinning. They told me later that my car flipped twice before hitting a lamppost. The impact deployed the airbags, which saved my life, but fractured 3 ribs and my collarbone. My head hit the side window hard enough to cause a traumatic brain injury. I have flashes of memory from the ambulance. Red lights pulsing, a paramedic saying my name over and over, the oxygen mask over my face. Then darkness. When I next became aware, it was of voices, distant, clinical. I couldn't open my eyes or move, but I could hear. This state, conscious but unable to respond, would later be explained as a result of the brain injury and the medically induced coma they placed me in to reduce swelling. Significant trauma to the temporal lobe, a woman's voice was saying. We've managed to control the intracranial pressure, but the next 24 hours will be critical. Have we located next of kin? Another voice. The emergency contact in her phone is listed as mother. We've called. They're on their way. Time has no meaning when you're floating in darkness. I don't know if it was minutes or hours later when I heard them arrive. Mr. and Mrs. Vance, I'm Dr. Chen, the neurologist managing your daughter's case. What happened? My father's voice tense and controlled as always. Dr. Chen explained the accident, my injuries, the induced coma, the uncertain prognosis. And what exactly are you doing for her? My mother sounding irritated as if my traumatic brain injury was an inconvenience in her schedule. Currently, we're monitoring intracranial pressure and maintaining the coma to give her brain time to heal. She'll need surgery once she's stabilized to repair the orbital fracture. Surgery? My father again. What kind of costs are we looking at here? There was a pause. I imagine Dr. Chen was giving them the look medical professionals reserve for particularly callous family members. Your insurance information would be helpful, she finally said. And we'll need authorization for the surgical procedure. There's been a misunderstanding, my mother said, her voice dropping. Clara isn't actually our daughter. I'm sorry? The doctor sounded confused. She has you listed as her emergency contacts. She was adopted, my father explained smoothly. Informally, the papers were never properly filed. I see. The doctor's voice had cooled significantly. Nevertheless, as her emergency contacts, you're not understanding me, my mother interrupted. She's not our responsibility. We owe her nothing. I'd experienced their emotional abandonment my entire life, but this was different. This was leaving me to die. Without authorization for treatment, the doctor began. Then don't treat her, my father said simply. Isn't there a state fund for indigent patients or something? Mr. Vance, your daughter is critically injured. Without surgery, she's not our daughter, my mother insisted. Not legally, not really. There was silence. Then the sound of papers rustling. There's also the matter of Beatrice Vance's estate, a new voice said. A nurse, maybe. The patient was notified as the primary beneficiary. That's a family matter, my father said quickly. My mother was not in her right mind when she made that will. We've been meaning to contest it. I see, the doctor said coldly. Well, in the absence of family willing to authorize treatment, we'll have to proceed under emergency provisions. Nurse Adams, please document this conversation and contact hospital legal. We'll be going now, my mother announced. Please don't contact us again regarding this patient. Footsteps. The door opening and closing. They were gone. I tried to scream, to move, to give any sign that I could hear them abandoning me. But I was trapped in my broken body, a prisoner of my own consciousness. I've never seen anything like it, Nurse Adams apparently said quietly. Their own daughter. Rich people, the doctor muttered. Call legal, then check her phone for other contacts. There must be someone who gives a damn about this woman. Time passed. I drifted in and out of awareness. Pain came and went as medication flowed through my system. Different voices spoke around me, medical jargon I couldn't fully comprehend. But one voice became familiar, gentle, constant. I'm just changing your sheets, Clara. You're doing great. Nurse Olivia Adams became my lifeline. She talked to me during her shifts, updating me on my condition, explaining the treatments, telling me about the weather outside. She'd play music from her phone, everything from classical to popular pop. The latest research shows coma patients can hear us, she told someone. I'm not leaving her alone, not after what her parents did. 3 days after the accident, through Olivia's one-sided conversations, I learned that the hospital had located Sophia. My business partner and friend had rushed to the hospital, authorized the treatments, and was fighting my parents on multiple fronts. Your friend is something else, Olivia told me during a sponge bath. She's got her lawyer here every day making sure you get everything you need. Apparently your parents are already making moves on your grandmother's estate, claiming you're incapacitated. I wanted to laugh at the irony. They abandoned me to die, then tried to use my resulting condition to steal my inheritance. It was so perfectly on brand for them. The surgery happened on day 5. I remember being wheeled somewhere, bright lights overhead. Then nothing until waking in recovery with a pounding headache and Olivia's voice. You did it, Clara. Surgery went perfectly. Dr. Chen says your brain swelling is already reducing. They're going to start bringing you out of the coma tomorrow. True consciousness returned gradually. First, the ability to squeeze a hand when asked. Then, opening my eyes to blinding light. Then, the agonizing process of having the breathing tube removed. Where? My first word, croaked through lips that felt alien. City General, Olivia answered, appearing in my field of vision. You're okay. You're going to be okay. But I wasn't okay, not really, because now I had to process what I'd heard. My parents had not only abandoned me my entire life, they had literally left me to die. Recovery was excruciating. Every movement sent shards of pain through my broken body. The first time they helped me sit up, I vomited from the vertigo. The first steps I took with the physical therapist left me drenched in sweat and tears. But physical pain was nothing compared to the psychological wound of knowing my parents had walked away when I needed them most. That knowledge sat like poison in my veins, tainting every moment of recovery. "You're doing amazing," Sophia would say during her daily visits. She'd brought my laptop, handled company decisions, fielded press inquiries about my accident. "The doctors say you're recovering twice as fast as expected. Spite is a powerful motivator," I joked weakly. It was during the second week of my hospital stay that Sophia finally told me about grandmother Beatrice. "I didn't want to add to your stress," she explained, sitting in the visitor's chair beside my bed. "But you should know your grandmother's attorney has been trying to reach you. Your parents are challenging the will." "What?" I struggled to sit up straighter. "On what grounds?" "They're claiming you're mentally incompetent due to your injuries." Sophia's expression was grim. "They filed the paperwork 3 days after your accident. The timing wasn't coincidental. They'd walked out of my hospital room, leaving me to die, and gone straight to a lawyer to steal my inheritance. I need to talk to her attorney," I insisted. Arthur Brooks arrived the next morning, a dignified man in his 60s with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He'd been my grandmother's attorney for 30 years. "Miss Vance," he greeted me formally, "I'm relieved to see you recovering. Your grandmother would be pleased." "My parents are trying to steal her house," I said without preamble. He nodded, placing his briefcase on the bedside table. "They filed for an emergency conservatorship, citing your medical condition. I've submitted medical reports from your doctors confirming you're competent to manage your affairs. The judge has temporarily frozen the estate until you can appear in court, when that's up to your medical team. There's no rush. The assets are secure." He pulled out a thick envelope from his briefcase. "Your grandmother asked me to give you this if anything happened to her before she could tell you herself." The envelope felt heavy in my hands. "What is it?" "The truth, I believe." He stood to leave. "She loved you very much, Clara. Never doubt that." I waited until evening to open it, after the nurses had finished their rounds and the hospital had quieted for the night. Inside was a letter written in my grandmother's elegant script and several official-looking documents. "My dearest Clara," the letter began, "if you're reading this, I failed to keep my promise to tell you everything in person. Forgive an old woman's cowardice. Some truths are harder to speak aloud than others. You've wondered about your birth parents all your life. The truth is, your mother was my niece, Lillian. She was 18 when she got pregnant, young, scared, and in no position to raise a child. Your biological father was her high school sweetheart who left for college and wanted nothing to do with a baby. I suggested adoption within the family. My son, Robert, and his wife, Patricia, had been trying for a child without success. It seemed the perfect solution. You would remain connected to your biological family, and they would have the baby they desperately wanted. What I didn't know then was that Patricia was already pregnant with Emily. She learned this just weeks after they took you home. Suddenly, they had 2 infant daughters instead of 1. I watched over the years as they treated you differently. I confronted Robert about it many times. He would always promise to do better, to love you equally. But some people cannot love what doesn't come from their own blood, no matter how precious the gift. The legal adoption was completed, regardless of what they may have told you. You are legally their daughter, with all the rights that entails. I've included the court documents proving this. I've also included the truth about your birth mother. Lillian died 5 years ago in a car accident, having never married or had other children. She asked about you often. I kept her updated on your accomplishments, your growth into the remarkable woman you've become. The house and everything I leave to you is rightfully yours, not just by my choice, but by blood. You are my family in every way that matters. I hope you can forgive me for not telling you sooner. I thought I was protecting you, but perhaps I was really protecting myself from having to explain my role in placing you with parents who couldn't love you as you deserved. Know that I have loved you completely from the moment Lillian placed you in my arms. All my love, always, Grandmother Beatrice." I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Then I examined the documents. My original birth certificate naming Lillian Vance as my mother, the adoption papers with my parents' signatures, the amended birth certificate listing Patricia and Robert Vance as my parents. It was all there. The truth, the proof, the confirmation that legally, morally, and by blood, I was a Vance. And my parents had lied to the doctors, probably to Emily, and certainly to themselves. That night, I made two decisions. First, I would recover fully, no matter how hard I had to work. And second, I would make sure my parents faced the consequences of their actions. I threw myself into physical therapy with renewed determination. 2 broken ribs, a shattered collarbone, facial fractures, and traumatic brain injury. None of it would stop me. I graduated from walker to cane within weeks, surprising even my therapists. "You're a machine," my physical therapist Alex commented during one particularly grueling session. "I have somewhere important to be," I replied, pushing through the pain to complete another set of exercises. Weeks after the accident, Dr. Chen cleared me for discharge. Olivia helped me pack up the cards, flowers, and gifts that had accumulated in my room, most from colleagues and friends, none from family. "What now?" Olivia asked as she wheeled me toward the hospital exit where Sophia waited with her car. I looked up at the nurse who had advocated for me when my own family wouldn't. "Now, I go home and write a letter." As Sophia drove me to her apartment where I'd be staying during outpatient recovery, I stared out the window at the city streets. Somewhere across town, my parents were probably still plotting, still lying, still expecting to get away with it all. They had no idea what was coming. Sophia's guest room became my war room. On the wall, I created a timeline of events, connecting my accident to my parents' legal maneuvers. My laptop became command central as I gathered evidence and formulated strategy. "You should be resting," Sophia worried, bringing me tea one evening. "I'll rest when it's done," I replied, not looking up from the email I was writing to Arthur Brooks. My first step was securing my legal position. Arthur confirmed what grandmother's letter had stated. My adoption was completely legal. My parents claimed that it was informal, was an outright lie. "They have no case for contesting the will," Arthur assured me during one of our daily calls. "But they're trying another angle now, claiming that as your parents, they should be your legal guardians during your recovery." After abandoning me at the hospital, I was incredulous. "They're saying it was a misunderstanding, that they were in shock. They've submitted affidavits claiming deep concern for your welfare." I bet they have. I thought of the hospital security footage Olivia had mentioned. "Can we subpoena the hospital records?" There were security cameras in my room. "Already done," Arthur said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "The footage contradicts their affidavit rather dramatically." Next came property security. Grandmother's house stood empty while the estate was in probate, but I knew my parents still had keys. I hired a security company to change the locks and install cameras throughout the property. "We can set up remote monitoring," the security consultant explained. "You'll be able to see any activity in real time on your phone or computer." "Perfect," I said. "And I want the footage backed up to a secure cloud server." Then came the most difficult part, writing the letter. I must have drafted it 20 different times, ranging from rage-filled accusations to cold clinical facts. None of it felt right. "You're overthinking it," Sophia said one night as I crumpled yet another attempt. "Just speak from your heart." "My heart wants to burn their world down," I admitted. "Then say that." I shook my head. "This isn't about revenge. It's about truth. It's about finally being seen." The breakthrough came during a session with Dr. Evans, the therapist I'd been seeing since leaving the hospital. "What do you really want from them?" she asked after I'd explained the situation. "I want them to acknowledge what they did, not just at the hospital, but my whole life. And if they never do," the question hit me like a physical blow, "then I want to be free of needing them to." That night, I wrote the letter that would be waiting for them, not from a place of anger, but from a place of clarity. I detailed their decades of emotional neglect, the lies about my adoption, and their ultimate betrayal at the hospital. I included copies of the security footage showing them abandoning me and copies of the legal documents proving my adoption was legitimate. But I also included forgiveness, not for their sake, but for mine. I was releasing them from any obligation to me and releasing myself from any obligation to them. "I no longer need your approval, your acknowledgement, or your love," I wrote in the final paragraph. "I am whole without you." I sealed the letter in an envelope and gave it to Arthur to place in the house when the time was right. The final piece fell into place when Arthur called to inform me my parents had scheduled a visit to grandmother's house, ostensibly to collect personal mementos before the estate was settled. They filed the paperwork with the probate court, he explained. They're coming this Saturday at 2 p.m. Will Emily be with them? I hadn't spoken to my sister since the holiday dinner 3 years ago. I had no idea if she knew what our parents had done. Yes, she's listed on the court filing. I took a deep breath. Then it's time. That Saturday morning, Arthur placed my letter on the dining room table in grandmother's house. The security company confirmed the cameras were operational. Sophia and I settled in at her apartment to watch the feed on my laptop. At exactly 2:03 p.m., my parents' luxury sedan pulled into the driveway. The plan was in motion, and there was no turning back. Through the security cameras, I watched my parents and Emily approach grandmother's front door. My father looked annoyed, checking his watch repeatedly. My mother wore her charity event smile, the one that never reached her eyes. Emily hung back slightly, her expression unreadable. "The key isn't working," my father complained, jiggling the doorknob. "Did you try the back door?" my mother suggested. "I shouldn't have to try the back door. This is my mother's house." "Was her house?" Emily corrected quietly. My father shot her a look before pulling out his phone. After a brief conversation, a locksmith arrived. I watched as he opened the door, had my father sign some paperwork, and departed. "Finally!" my mother said, stepping inside. "Robert, check if the silver is still here. I want to make sure Clara hasn't already emptied the place." The casual accusation made my blood boil. Sophia placed a hand on my shoulder. "Remember why we're doing this?" she murmured. I nodded, focusing on the screens as my family moved through my grandmother's house. "Everything looks the same," Emily commented, running her fingers along the antique sideboard in the hallway. "Mother always did have good taste," my mother admitted, examining a crystal vase. "This would look perfect in our foyer." "We're here for your father's childhood mementos," Emily reminded her. "Not to shop." "Don't be naive," my mother snapped. "Clara is never going to recover enough to claim this inheritance. The judge will award guardianship to us, and then everything here will be ours anyway." "She's in physical therapy now," Emily said. "Her doctors say she's making remarkable progress." "Well, her brain injury is another matter," my father interjected, coming down the stairs. "The silver is all there, Patricia. I checked the master bedroom too. Nothing seems disturbed." "Has anyone actually visited her recently?" Emily asked. "To see how she's doing?" My parents exchanged a glance. "The hospital staff have been very uncooperative," my mother said primly. "Besides, you know how Clara is. She's always been so independent." "Too independent," my father muttered. "If she'd listened to me about that driving route..." "Are you seriously blaming her for getting hit by a distracted driver?" Emily sounded incredulous. "Of course not," my mother soothed. "Your father is just upset. This has been hard on all of us." They moved into the dining room where my letter waited on the polished mahogany table. "What's this?" My father picked up the envelope. My name was written on the front in my grandmother's handwriting. Arthur had used an old birthday card as reference. "It's addressed to Clara," Emily pointed out. "Well, she's not here, is she?" My mother plucked it from my father's hands and tore it open. As she began reading, her face drained of color. What is it?" my father demanded. Wordlessly, she handed him the letter. He skimmed it, his expression darkening with each page. "This is outrageous," he spluttered finally. "Lies and manipulations." "What does it say?" Emily reached for the letter, but my father held it away. "Nothing you need to concern yourself with." "Family business." "I am family," Emily insisted, snatching the letter from his hand. She began reading, her eyes widening. "Mom! Dad! What is this about abandoning Clara at the hospital?" My mother collapsed dramatically into a dining chair. "It wasn't like that. We were in shock. The doctors were so pessimistic." "It says here you told them she wasn't your real daughter and you owed her nothing." Emily's voice shook. "That you left without authorizing treatment." "That's taken out of context," my father blustered. "We merely explained that the adoption was complicated." Emily continued reading, her face growing paler. "There's a link to security footage." She pulled out her phone and typed in the URL from the letter. For several minutes, the dining room was silent, except for the tiny audio coming from Emily's phone. My parents' voices clearly stating I wasn't their daughter, that they owed me nothing, that they wouldn't authorize treatment. You left her to die, Emily whispered when the video ended. Your own daughter. She's not my mother, began my mother, then stopped herself. Not what? Not your daughter? Because according to these documents, she absolutely is. Emily brandished the adoption papers included with the letter. You legally adopted her. You raised her for 28 years. And then you abandoned her when she needed you most. You don't understand the complexities, my father started. I understand perfectly, Emily cut him off. I've always known you treated her differently. I thought it was because she was so self-sufficient, so competent. I never imagined it was because you didn't consider her your real daughter. My mother straightened, reverting to the haughty demeanor she used when challenged. We gave her everything, an excellent education, every opportunity. Except love, Emily finished. Except the one thing she actually needed. On the security feed, I watched my sister's realization unfold, the pieces falling into place, the recognition of patterns she'd observed but never understood. All those times you dismissed her achievements, she said slowly. All those times you made her feel less than... It wasn't because you had high standards. It was because you didn't think she belonged. That's not true, my father insisted. We always wanted the best for her. The best! Emily's voice rose. You left her with brain trauma and broken bones to die alone in a hospital. How was that the best? My mother stood suddenly. We need to find Clara. She's clearly been poisoned against us. That Sophia person has always been a bad influence. She knows about the conservatorship filing, doesn't she? My father realized, scanning the letter again. She knows we're trying to take control of Mother's estate. Is that all you care about? Emily asked incredulously. The money? The house? What about your daughter who nearly died? Of course we care about Clara, my mother said automatically. But we have to be practical. In her condition that you made worse by abandoning her, Emily interrupted. Her condition that you're now trying to exploit to steal her inheritance? My father's face hardened. That's enough, Emily. This doesn't concern you. Doesn't concern me. Clara is my sister. Half-sister, my mother corrected reflexively, then pressed her hand to her mouth as if trying to push the words back in. Emily stared at her. So, it's true. You really don't think of her as family. The realization seemed to physically pain her. She gathered the letter and documents with trembling hands. I can't be here right now. I can't be near either of you. Emily, wait, my father called as she headed for the door. I'll be at my apartment. Don't call me. I need time to process this. She gestured vaguely at them. All of this. After she left, my parents stood in stunned silence. Now look what you've done, my mother finally hissed. You've turned Emily against us too. Me? You're the one who called Clara her half-sister. Well, she is. And now, both our daughters hate us, and Clara is going to use this letter and that video to destroy us in court. My father paced the dining room, running his hands through his thinning hair. We need to call their lawyer. He'll know how to spin this. We can say we were distraught, not thinking clearly. The video, Robert, the video shows us perfectly calm, perfectly clear. We'll say it was edited. Deepfakes are everywhere these days. My mother sank back into the chair. This is a nightmare. They continued plotting for another hour, calling their lawyer, searching the house for valuables they could claim as family heirlooms, making lists of potential character witnesses who could testify to their parental devotion. It was painful to watch, but also illuminating. They never once expressed concern for my well-being, never once questioned whether their treatment of me had been wrong. They were solely focused on damage control, on preserving their reputation and access to my grandmother's money. When they finally left, taking several small antiques despite Emily's earlier objection, I closed the laptop. Well, Sophia said quietly, that was exactly what I expected. I finished for her. They haven't changed. They never will. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It's Emily. We need to talk. Please. I stared at the message for a long moment before responding. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., the cafe on Main Street. Whatever came next, I was finally ready to face it on my terms. The cafe on Main Street was busy when I arrived, leaning on my cane. Emily was already there, sitting at a corner table, 2 untouched coffees in front of her. She looked up as I approached, her eyes widening at my still healing facial injuries. Clara! She stood awkwardly, hesitating between a hug and a handshake. We settled for an uncomfortable nod. Emily! I eased myself into the chair opposite her. You wanted to talk. She pushed one of the coffees toward me. Black, with 1 sugar. You still take it that way? I nodded, surprised she remembered. Thanks. I didn't know, she blurted out. About the hospital, about them leaving you there. I swear I didn't know. I believe you, and I did. Emily had many faults, but deliberate cruelty wasn't one of them. Did you read the entire letter? She nodded miserably. And watch the video. I can't believe they would do that to anyone, let alone their own daughter. Not their daughter, I corrected automatically. Not in their eyes, but you are legally. And, well, we grew up together. You're my sister. She reached for my hand across the table, but I pulled back slightly. 28 years, Emily. 28 years of watching them love you completely while measuring out affection to me like it was a limited resource. Did you really never notice? She flushed. I noticed they were harder on you. I thought it was because you were the oldest, or because you were so smart they had higher expectations. They told the hospital staff I wasn't their real daughter. That they owed me nothing. My voice remained steady, but inside I felt the familiar ache. Those weren't heat-of-the-moment words. That was their truth. It's not my truth, Emily insisted. You're my sister. My big sister who taught me to ride a bike and helped me with my college applications and stood up for me when I totaled Dad's car. I had done all those things because that's what big sisters do, even when they're jealous of the golden child, even when they're starving for the love that's showered on their sibling. What do you want from me, Emily? She looked taken aback by the directness of the question. I want us to be sisters again. Real sisters. I've missed you these 3 years. And our parents? Where do they fit in this vision? Her expression darkened. I don't know. I'm not speaking to them right now. What they did, I can't forgive it. They'll pressure you to reconcile, I warned. They'll minimize what happened, rewrite history. I know their playbook, she managed a weak smile. I've had a front row seat to their revisionist history. We sat in silence for a moment, the cafe noise washing over us. Can I ask you something? Emily finally said. The letter you left them? What did it actually say? The whole thing. I took a sip of coffee, considering. Then I pulled out my phone and opened the document where I'd saved the final version. Dear Robert and Patricia, I began reading. I'm addressing you by your first names because Mom and Dad no longer feels truthful. Parents protect their children. Parents put their children's needs above their own. You have done neither. By the time you read this, you will have already tried to declare me incompetent. You will have already filed paperwork to control the inheritance grandmother Beatrice left me. You will have already begun crafting a narrative that paints you as concerned parents and me as an ungrateful daughter. Let me save you the effort. I am alive despite your best efforts. The doctors at City General Hospital have documented your refusal to authorize my treatment. The security cameras captured your exact words. She's not our real daughter. We owe her nothing. For 28 years, I have tried to earn your love. I achieved academic excellence. I built a successful company. I did everything possible to make you proud. It was never enough because I was never enough. Not your blood, not your real daughter. Grandmother Beatrice left me a letter explaining everything. My birth mother was her niece, Lillian. The adoption was legal and binding despite what you told the hospital staff. I've included copies of all relevant documentation. I've also included a USB drive with the hospital security footage. It will be submitted as evidence should you continue your attempts to control my inheritance or claim guardianship over me. This letter isn't about revenge. It's about truth. The truth that you couldn't love me as I deserve to be loved. The truth that when I needed you most, you chose to walk away. I forgive you, not because you deserve forgiveness, but because I deserve peace. I release you from any obligation to me, and I release myself from any obligation to you. I no longer need your approval, your acknowledgement, or your love. I am whole without you. Clara Vance, P.S. The locks have been changed, and this house is legally mine. Please direct any future communications to my attorney, Arthur Brooks. When I finished reading, Emily was crying silently. That's the most honest thing I've ever heard, she whispered. And the saddest. I put my phone away. It needed to be said. They called me 6 times yesterday, she said, wiping her eyes. Left voicemails about how worried they are about you, how they want to help with your recovery. She shook her head in disgust. It's like they live in an alternate reality. They do, I agreed. One where they're always the heroes of the story. What happens now? She asked. With the inheritance? With the guardianship claim? Arthur is handling it. The hospital footage alone should sink their case. After that, I shrugged. I move on. I build a life without them in it. And me? Her voice was small. Is there room in that life for me? I studied my sister, my biological half-sister as it turned out. The golden child who had benefited from our parents' favoritism her entire life. But also the woman sitting before me now, choosing truth over comfort, choosing me over them. I don't know yet, I said honestly. There's a lot of history between us, Emily. A lot of hurt. I understand, she nodded, wiping away tears. But I'd like to try, if you're willing. I thought of Grandmother Beatrice's letter. A family being those who love you, not necessarily those who share your blood. Small steps, I finally said. We start small and see where it goes. The relief on her face was palpable. Small steps, I can do that. We finished our coffees, talking cautiously about neutral topics. Her residency at the local hospital, my company's latest projects. It wasn't comfortable yet, but it was civil. A beginning of sorts. As predicted, my parents escalated their efforts after finding the letter. They called everyone they knew in the legal community, trying to find a judge who would grant their conservatorship request. They attempted to access my medical records, claiming parental rights. They even tried to contact my doctors directly. None of it worked. The hospital footage was damning, and Arthur Brooks was relentless in protecting my interests. The conservatorship request was denied. The probate judge ruled in my favor regarding grandmother's estate. The house and everything in it was legally mine. 3 weeks after our cafe meeting, Emily called me. They're filing for a hearing to contest the adoption, she said without preamble. They're claiming Grandmother Beatrice coerced them into adopting you, that they never wanted to in the first place. The words should have hurt. Instead, I felt oddly calm. Let them. The documentation is clear. The adoption was legal. It's not about winning for them anymore, Emily said sadly. It's about hurting you. I know. I'd always known. How are you holding up? I moved out of my apartment. I'm staying with a friend from the hospital. I couldn't be near them right now. I'm sorry. And I was. Despite everything, Emily was losing her parents too. The loving, devoted parents she had known her whole life. Learning they were capable of such cruelty must have shattered her world. Don't be. It's not your fault. She paused. Actually, I was wondering, your grandmother's house is pretty big, right? I smiled despite myself. Are you inviting yourself to live with me, Emily? Just temporarily, she said quickly, until I find a new place, and only if you're comfortable with it. It was a big step, bigger than coffee at a cafe, but perhaps it was time for big steps. The East Wing has its own bathroom, I told her, and I'm rarely home before 8 anyway. Really? You mean it? Small steps, remember? We'll see how it goes. After we hung up, I sat looking out the window of my temporary apartment. Somewhere across town, my parents were plotting their next move, still unable to accept the truth of what they'd done, still unable to see me as their daughter deserving of love. But for the first time since the accident, I wasn't defined by their rejection. I was defined by my survival, my resilience, and the family I was choosing to build around me. The letter had done its work. Not by changing them, nothing could do that, but by freeing me from needing them to change. 6 months after the accident, Dr. Chen declared my physical recovery complete. The last cast came off. The final follow-up MRI showed no remaining brain trauma, and my physical therapy sessions were reduced to once a month for maintenance. You're a medical miracle, she told me during our final appointment. Most patients with your injuries would still be in intensive rehab. I had good motivation, I replied, thinking of the letter, of my parents, of the life I was determined to reclaim. I moved into Grandmother Beatrice's house, my house now, in early spring. The Victorian needed updates, but I left the bones of it intact. The intricate woodwork, the stained glass windows, the wide porch where Grandmother and I had spent summer evenings discussing books and dreams. Emily moved into the East Wing as planned. Our cohabitation was awkward at first. Too many childhood patterns to unlearn, too many sensitivities to navigate, but we established ground rules and respected each other's space. Slowly, tentatively, we began building a relationship based on choice rather than obligation. My business partner Sophia became a frequent visitor, as did nurse Olivia, who'd left the hospital to work for a home healthcare agency. Arthur Brooks joined us for Sunday brunches, continuing the tradition I'd shared with grandmother Beatrice. "You've created quite the family here," he commented one Sunday, watching Emily and Olivia debate the merits of different medical specialties while Sophia set the table. "Chosen family," I corrected gently. "The best kind." My parents made one final attempt to reassert control. They filed a lawsuit claiming emotional distress, arguing that my letter and the hospital footage had caused them significant psychological harm. It was a desperate move, transparently vindictive. The judge dismissed the case with prejudice, ruling that truth could not be considered harmful speech. In his written opinion, he noted that they had abandoned their daughter in her time of greatest need and were now seeking to punish her for merely documenting that abandonment. The ruling made local news. Former colleagues, distant relatives, and social club friends all learned what Robert and Patricia Vance had done. Their carefully cultivated social standing crumbled overnight. They left town a month later, relocating to another state without saying goodbye to either of their daughters. "Are you okay?" Emily asked when we heard the news about them leaving. I considered the question carefully. "Yes," I said finally. "I think I am." The truth was, they had left me long before they physically departed. Perhaps they had never really been with me at all. With the legal battles behind me, I turned my attention to the future. My company had thrived even during my absence thanks to Sophia's leadership. Now we were developing new software inspired by my hospital experience, a communication system for patients with traumatic brain injuries who couldn't speak but remained conscious. "We're calling it Bridge Talk," I explained to Olivia over dinner. "It tracks eye movement and brain activity to help doctors determine consciousness levels in non-responsive patients." "That would have helped you," she noted. "It would have helped the doctors," I corrected. I knew I was conscious. They didn't. The project gave purpose to my pain, transforming a traumatic experience into something that might help others. Grandmother Beatrice would have approved. As for Emily, our relationship continued to evolve. There were difficult conversations about our childhood, about the favoritism she had benefited from, about her own complicity in my isolation. But there was also healing. She brought home takeout when I worked late. I helped her study for her board exams. We discovered we both loved terrible reality TV shows and spent Sunday evenings mocking them together. "I never knew you were funny," she told me once, laughing at my impression of a particularly dramatic reality star. "You never knew me at all," I replied, but without bitterness. It was simply truth. A year to the day after the accident, I held a dinner party in Grandmother Beatrice's dining room. Sophia was there with her new partner. Olivia brought her wife. Arthur Brooks came with a bottle of expensive champagne. Emily invited a colleague from the hospital, a neurosurgeon with kind eyes who looked at her with unmistakable interest. As I looked around the table at these people who had chosen to be in my life, who had shown up when it mattered, I felt a sense of completion that had nothing to do with my parents' validation. "I'd like to make a toast," I said, raising my glass. "To family. Not defined by blood or by law, but by love, by choice, and by showing up when it matters most. To family," they echoed, glasses clinking. Later, after everyone had gone home except Emily, I found myself on the porch swing where Grandmother Beatrice and I had spent so many evenings. "Room for one more?" Emily asked tentatively, hovering in the doorway. I patted the space beside me, and she sat down. "Do you ever wonder where they are now?" she asked after a while. "What they're doing?" "Sometimes," I admitted, "but it doesn't hurt anymore." "How did you do that?" "Make it stop hurting?" I thought about the letter I'd written, about the truth it had contained, about the freedom it had given me. "I stopped expecting them to be something they couldn't be," I said finally. "And I started building a life that didn't need their approval to be meaningful." Emily nodded slowly. "I'm still working on that part. It takes time," I assured her. "And you don't have to do it alone?" We sat in companionable silence, watching fireflies dance in the gathering twilight. In the distance, a car backfired, reminding me briefly of the accident that had changed everything. But instead of fear or pain, I felt only gratitude for the path it had set me on. The truth had nearly killed me, but it had also finally set me free. I hope my story resonates with those of you who have felt the sting of conditional love or family betrayal. Remember that family is defined by actions, not blood, by who stays when everyone else walks away. Have you ever had to redefine what family means to you? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story touched something in you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they too can build a life filled with chosen family who truly sees them. Thank you for being part of my healing journey by listening to my story. Remember, sometimes the family we create is more powerful than the one we're born into.